Hey everyone, it's Ian with racingcards.com. Having another one of these video community chats, and I'm excited to have Scott, aka Pyryte from Pyryte's Card Castle on. What's up, Scott?
What's going on?
Let's just jump into it, man. What got you into F1 and F1 cards?
Sure. So, specifically getting me into F1 in general, I mean, that all came from my father. My father was just a massive F1 fan his entire life. Him and my mother actually went to a F1 race for their honeymoon, which my mom probably wasn't too too happy about.
Is that where you're going after your wedding?
No,
Monaco's a good
actually, although
destination.
although we are going to a couple of races this year, and I think that's actually the reason we're not doing a big honeymoon this year. That's going to be next year. We're going to Africa for the real
Nice.
honeymoon, but we're going to Zandvoort this year, which is
Awesome.
pretty big to see Max's race. But yeah, every Sunday that I was at my father's, if there was a race on, we were watching it, and generally it's early in the morning because that's how the time kind of works out. So I grew up, every Sunday morning we were watching a race. And I loved it, even as a little kid playing with the little figurines and stuff, kind of like these models you got here. This one's actually Max Verstappen's first model. Oh, there you go.
There's the
Nice.
Senna.
That's a good one. Yeah, this is Max's F3 uh,
Nice.
car, actually. But yeah, so I was always into the cars and loved talking about it with my father. So that's how I got into it. I really took a deep dive in 2019. I went to my first race ever with my father for his 70th birthday. I got us tickets to go to the Montreal Grand Prix, and hyperfixation completely took over. And then ever since, like I have just been full on F1 all the time. And the cards I actually got into a little bit later. I think it was May of 2021 is when I first kind of found out about the cards. I was like, "Oh my God, this
It's still
is."
pretty early. I mean, you're
Yeah,
only a month after
yeah, I
release.
think so. I know I wasn't in tune with like when they were supposed to come out and everything. I know people were waiting and waiting and waiting, so I kind of got in when they were already released. And I didn't really know too much about the cards. I bought 2 boxes of Chrome and a box of Sapphire on eBay, and I thought that $600 was pricey. Looking back, I mean, hindsight's 2020. But I remember the first card I ever pulled was a George Russell variation, and I was like, oh, it looks like a refractor. That's cool. And I turned it over and it didn't say refractor. I was like, oh, I guess it's not a good card. And pretty good card, right? So, but yeah, I mean, as a kid, I was always into sports cards in general because they didn't really have F1 cards back then or nothing that I could get. So it's just kind of a really nice marriage of cards and F1. So I've just been all in ever since.
You talk about that first box. I got in later in the summer, so my first box I think was like $800 or so, and I bought actually a lot of boxes, and I ripped one. They were just sitting in the corner of like my office, and I was like, I'm just gonna hold them. I'm gonna hold them, and
Sure.
then I just ripped, right. So I
Yeah.
ripped it, and I pulled out of my first box like a out of 50 True Gold like Hamilton, and I was like, oh, this is easy, right? And I go in and tell my wife, I was like, I could sell this for like 10K. She's like, BS. You can never
Yeah.
sell.
Yeah.
And I ended
Right.
up selling it for like 12. And then I was like, I haven't pulled another one of those since. Like it's
They're
tough.
tough. It
And
is.
you
No,
deal
it,
with
it
that all the
is.
time. Like if people don't know, you know, Scott, aka Pyryte at Pirates Card Castle is a huge breaker. And so, you constantly are ripping open these packs. It's tough to get these hits. Can you walk us through a little bit on, the breaks and the types of breaks, that you and others do for F1?
Sure. Yeah, so obviously there's a few different formats. My favorite and the one that I started with, and honestly, that's all I did until probably November, December, is called PYT. And that stands for Pick Your Team. And the reason I like Pick Your Team is because you get to do just that, right? I mean, you get to pick the team with the drivers that you're a fan of. You're paying the price that's kind of allotted, given what you can potentially pull. So if you're an Alfa Romeo fan, you don't have to pay, the crazy prices of a box. You can pay just that small chunk and pick up Alfa Romeo. Or if you love Lewis Hamilton and you're going for those big Mercedes cards, it's still an expensive slot. But again, you don't have to eat the entire box cost. So that's why PYT is interesting. There's also random, right? So
Mm.
uh, There's a lot of different ways to do random. You'll see 4-spot random, 5, 7, 8. I mean, anyone will come up with anything, but essentially with randoms, you're getting put in there on a random slot, and people are either using, you know, random.org or Gemin or whatever they're using to randomize the slots, and then you can end up with, only spending 1/8 of a box and getting a Mercedes slot, right? That's kind of the allure to it. Um, and then, going beyond that, obviously, then there's fillers and everything where you spend, $30 for a 1 in 200 chance
Yeah.
at getting Mercedes or something like that. And then, of course, there's always the fabled Percy, where you can
Yeah.
just take it all yourself. But yeah, those are kind of the standard formats that are floating around right now.
And what are you? Well, let me actually back up here. Like, if we think about moments, breaking, and you've done a lot of these breaks, so much so where you can tell the card or just seeing just an edge of it, right? And I think any of us that have ripped, F1 this product over and over and over again are
Oh
pretty
yeah.
excited for the next card. So we're not ripping the same ones. But what are some of the coolest moments in ripping? Whether it's a big card that you've been able to get for somebody, can you walk us through maybe a couple of those?
Yeah, so my first the biggest moment I've ever had, I actually ended up hitting a card for the queen of the castle, my fiance. We're getting married this Friday. Small plug there.
Yeah, congrats.
But it was early on in my breaking career, so not a lot of people knew who I was. Slots didn't fill extremely fast. So my fiance, said, "Hey, I'll take the Red Bull slot." Because Red Bull's my favorite team. It was my father's favorite team. He loved Max Verstappen. So we were doing a box of Chrome and pulled an orange Max Verstappen autograph.
Oh my gosh, that's
And
huge. That's such
I
a
I
big card.
I went nuts. I went absolutely nuts. It was my first, big autograph. And it had, really big connection with my father. I was kind of, wearing his watch he had passed down to me and everything. So that was a very special moment for me. I think the biggest card that I've ever hit for someone else was also actually fairly early in my career when I was still ripping on YouTube. I hit someone the 44 out of 50 gold portrait Lewis Hamilton.
Oh,
And I remember at the time, prices, it was still kinda early on, and, maybe I didn't really have a full grasp of that 44 and really how important it was. I was like, "Oh, this is easily a $5,000 card." I mean, that's like a $20,000
oh
card
yeah.
at this point now with the 44. So, yeah, that was really cool. It's really fun to rip for other folks, especially knowing, who they're gunning for. Obviously, everyone wants Lewis Hamilton, but even when you're getting like the orange autograph of Otmar Safnauer for someone who's an Otmar Safnauer fan, one of the guys who joins my breaks all the time on Racing Point Slot has a huge Otmar Safnauer collection,
Really?
and I've pulled him a couple
I just
autographs, so
sold a
it's pretty cool.
red, and so maybe he bought it on
He
eBay.
may have, he
Yeah,
may have.
yeah, that's funny. So let's I'm curious. You mentioned the Hamilton portraits. Clearly the autos, but what do you think are some of the more underrated cards that you think have some upside? As we look back on this product years from now, that we go like, man, we should have gotten some of those cards. Whether it's the 70ths or maybe some of the up and coming drivers. What are your thoughts on
Yeah,
that?
so I think, and it's kind of been curtailed a little bit now. Early on, no one wanted track tags. No one
Yeah,
wanted World of Wheels. No one wanted them at all. It didn't even if they were color, like people were very lukewarm on them. Now the colors of those have blown up, especially the track tags. So there's probably not too much upside left there, but that's an example. I'd say where the upside is, I'd have to agree the 70th, because I think right now when people look at the 70th, they don't have the serial number, right? And everyone kind of,
yeah,
doesn't like that, but they have that 70th stamp. And it's going to be the only product that has that 70th stamp, right? I mean, we're going to go at least another 4 or 5 years until maybe they throw a 75 stamp on something. But we're certainly not going to get a 71 through 74 stamp. So I think that will be fairly iconic. It's also just one of the biggest years. It's the first year that this stuff came out. So I think that 70ths are kind of flying under the radar, especially the Reds, right? Because the
yep,
Reds, and you got to kind of math it out, right? But there's supposedly only four
Yeah, they're
of each
more
red
rare.
70th. So they're
Yeah.
actually exactly they're more rare than the numbered ones. So I think the reds in 70th are really flying under the radar right now.
Well, even like so here's a orange Hamilton 70th and then just, a gold 70th of
Yeah,
Hamilton and a
just
PSA
casually.
10. But they like the purples sell for more than those two cards, which is crazy. And it's because they're numbered, right? But if you just look at the pack odds and you do the math where, you know, I think people are going to look back on those. What about what I love about F1 is you can start to forecast who are the up and coming drivers, right? Like you have a good in quotes farm system, if you will, of Formula 3, F2, like even further down, even in karting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who are some of the I'm really excited to see Oscars like cards, they'll be coming out more. Like that's going to be a big
That's true.
pull.
Yeah.
People started to
Yeah.
jump on, Schwartzman towards the end of the year. I went hard in the summer on Zhao, just thinking like he might get a seat. And I've got 5 of his gold autos, and I'm
You
lucky
did.
I, grabbed him when I did. But who are some of those drivers for you?
It's funny you mentioned that real quick. I just want to plug. I actually just pulled, I seem to just have something in the castle. I just pulled the 24 out of 50 gold auto of Zhao for someone in the
Awesome.
castle. So driver number
Yeah.
for him next season. But, I think Zhao, great job on that. That was a huge pickup hitting him early in the summer because everyone knew Schumacher, right? Schumacher
Yeah.
was the big pull from F2 and then Yuki because he was in F1. But I think obviously, going forward, I actually really like Daruvula. And so
Really?
keep this on the DL,
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
But
No one's going to
Daruvula,
watch this anyways.
he's a couple things going for him. So he won the last race in Abu Dhabi, finished
Yep.
the season on a high. He's a Red Bull junior driver, and yes, there are a million of them, but he is one of their highest rated Red Bull juniors. He's just making the switch over to Prima. Now, Prima and ART Grand Prix collectively have won the last 7 F2, and this goes back to when it was GP2. But they've won the last 7 F2 championships, one of those teams.
Mhm.
So I think he's got a good shot at taking this championship next year. And once you win the championship in F2, I mean that puts you up there. I mean there haven't
Yeah.
been many F2 champions aside from Nick DeVries in recent years that haven't gotten a shot at a seat. So and Nick may even within the future years. But yeah, so I'm big on Daruvilla. I've been slowly building up a little stock there on him. It's tough with the silver autos for a lot of F2 drivers because I mean they're out of 500 or 600,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of them. But if you can get the color autos of those guys, that's pretty big. Now I think Piastri will be similar to Mick of this year. Everyone will be gunning
I
for
agree.
him. Zhao's got another card in F2. And there's a couple other, junior drivers that are new. I think Liam Lawson, Denny Hauger. There's going to be a few that will be nice to kind of prospect on.
So then that breaks into perhaps like the next product that's coming out, which is the the 2021 product coming out in 2022, hopefully coming out soon, not delayed again.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
and the checklist just came out, and aside from like now we can get Oscar, Piastri cards, but Alonso. I mean, Alonso has a huge fan base going back to 2006 that
Yeah.
has just been like maybe they didn't get the Futera cards. They're Topps is a different level, but we're gonna have Alonso cards. What's some of the things that as you've checked out the checklist that you're excited for in the next product, but also maybe some of your early insights as you look through it of some drivers are gonna be missing some of the cards that perhaps we saw in the last product.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting, right? And I think one of the biggest things that folks will be looking for now, especially once Sapphire comes out, but just in Chrome and in paper, is the variations, right? And so the variation lists got released, and you can see the way they did it is they kept the top 2 teams, so all drivers from the top 2 teams, so Hamilton, Bottas, Max, and Perez, right? Because now everyone's on their new team. The new 3 rookies coming in. So Schumacher, Sonoda, and Mazepin, and then the 3 other ex World Driver champions in Fernando Alonso, Sebastian Vettel, and Kimi Räikkönen. So we do lose Lando Norris,
And
Russell,
Albon.
Leclerc. I mean, we're losing a lot of big names from that variation. But I think that, it'll be pretty cool. I think, honestly, we have a couple teams at the bottom. Alfa Romeo is going to be a tough sell just because they do not have either driver on the grid this year. I mean, it's similar to kind of how Haas was last year.
Yeah.
They don't have their drivers on the grid, so won't be as important. But Kimi Räikkönen being an world driver champion, he retired. I think he'll pull in some fans there. I know he's got a pretty good fan base. But other than that, we've obviously got teams switching names. Racing Point is now going to be Aston Martin. It's got Vettel and Stroll. And we have a few other mix-ups, Sainz going to Ferrari, Ricardo going to McLaren. And it's interesting because even though some of the drivers are switching teams, every time I look at the list, it makes me more excited. I'm like, oh, Ferrari's getting Carlos Sainz. Oh, that's exciting. They're going
Yep.
to be better. And then I'm like, oh, but McLaren, they're getting Ricardo. They're going to be better, even though they lost Sainz. So I think there's also something about just seeing the drivers in the racing suits of the team they're on now that kind of adds a little bit to it. I will say it'll be interesting now that Bottas is going to be on Alfa Romeo. He won a few races in 2020, so we're going to have cards of him, on the Mercedes stuff as we go through, and he's going to be out there racing for Alfa Romeo. And then it's going to be even weirder when we get to 2022 product because he'll still have cards in the set. Like he won Turkey, he won the 2021 Turkish Grand Prix, so he'll have a card for that. But he'll be in an Alfa Romeo suit on the portrait in 2022. And we've got a couple instances of that here this year as well.
I think as you talked about the variations, right? Like we don't have Lando, we don't have Russell on that.
Yep.
I think that's okay from a standpoint of it just adds that much more value and scarcity, if you will, of this past product, which is pretty much close to extinct, right? And you can fight me on that, but it's getting tougher and tougher to find boxes every single week. But I think it adds something to it, and so it's pretty exciting. And as you talked about some up and coming drivers, end of the year with Druvula, like Sonoda closed out the year pretty well too. It'd be pretty cool to get a variation of his.
Yeah,
we're gonna get
with the
that
rookie
RC
card
logo,
yeah,
on there, and so I'm excited for this next product. If you were to, well, I'll back up. Like I almost asked the question that was the layup question, which is like, who's your favorite driver for your PC, for your personal collection? Clearly Max, right?
Pretty easy for me.
Yeah. But who are some of those other drivers that you look to collect? And do you have any like for me, I'm collecting all the World on Wheels gold wave and gold. Like I'm trying to complete that set. I'm trying to complete a purple set. Is there anything that like you're digging on, trying to complete sets that people can either help you on or maybe aren't obvious?
Yeah. So, and a lot of people probably do know this at the time, but so I am a big collector of the 141. That's Max Verstappen's Grand Prix win in Austria. He's got the iconic double pump.
That's a cool one. Yeah.
Yep. And it's not a portrait, right? Portraits are extremely expensive. I mean, if you're trying to rainbow a portrait, you're spending, tens of thousands of dollars, right? Especially even just for the red, you're going to be spending tens of thousands of dollars. So, you parlay that down and you're going to be putting in a lot. So I figured, hey, I'm going to go for this card. I really like it. I think it's his best insert, kind of like the Hamilton 142 Silverstone. So I've got everything except for True Red.
Okay.
I have the Red 70th. I have the Red Wave. I have the Red Sapphire. So I'm missing True Red Chrome and then the two 101s. I know where the Superfractor is, and I'm actually going to visit him at the end of the month, and I'm coming home with that card. We'll see. I'm going to try to get it
Is
from
it
him.
West Coast based? I won't go into
No, it's actually East Coast based. I'm flying down.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't share
the
the name.
Let's not go too much
case.
into the details.
But I am getting a case, so I'm picking up a case. I'm going to try to wrangle the 141 out of his hands.
Awesome. Well, I tell you what, like I want to see if we can have a social media moment here. You and I talked about this before. I'm going to rip open a Topps Dynasty box. Trying to get my mojo, like how you and all the best breakers do, where you like have that card to rub off on the box. And so I have my my Hamilton 1 of 5 here.
That
It's
is a hell of a card,
PSA
man.
10, so good
Did,
card.
did you open that card out of a box? No.
And to be honest, like the amount of boxes that I've now ripped of Dynasty, and I've gotten pretty much nothing. I have an Antonio, I have a Cyril, I have a Latifi, I mean, the list goes on and on. My best that I've ever ripped out of a box is an Albon, which
Okay.
even is still like towards the bottom of the tier, perhaps. But I am an Albon fan. So look,
Yeah, I
I'm
like
gonna
Albon as well.
rip a box here. There is a little bit of a
Let's
tape
go.
delay, so I apologize on this other camera.
No problem.
But yeah, these are such a hard hit because there's a lot of like cards you don't want, these boxes.
This, I will say, as a breaker, this is the highest pressure rip ever. I've only ripped a couple of them for customers. My hands shake every time, man. It's expensive. Here we
All
go.
right. So let's start from the
Good luck, man.
right, and see if we can see if we got single patch or hang on. Looks like we got silver. I'm sure you can probably. Yeah. All right. Let's so this is gonna be out of 10, single patch. Let's just rip the band-aid off on it.
Oh no! I
Oh
saw
my
the
God.
red. I saw the red. I knew
I
it was
know.
Ferrari. Oh,
Oh.
Mattia, Harry Potter in the flesh.
Oh my God. All right, I'm not buying any more of these boxes.
You're gonna have the whole manager set.
Well, to be honest, like I could, yeah. The at least he signs his autograph. And what I mean by that is like Cyril is just like circles.
A circle. I know, I hate that.
It's like, dude, you didn't even care. Is like what that one is.
Man, I tell you, I saw that arrow and I was thinking the win now. Oh man. Almost
Hey,
a Leclerc.
I'm gonna rip open one pack of Chrome because I want to see if we can find your red.
There we go.
We'll have
the red 141. I'll take that.
One. Yeah. It doesn't look like it's going to be your Chrome, but I do want to talk to you about the cards. What's crazy is like in this pack that I just opened, the cards are upside down in all ways. It's like the quality control, man, of Topps.
Oh my gosh.
Like, I mean, that has to like just drive you nuts. So
it's brutal. I remember the first time I opened a backwards pack like that, I was like, what the hell is going on here?
Oh yeah,
and
totally.
It's tough.
So, all right, Aston Martin. We got a Lando 27. What are your thoughts on these car cards?
So I think like base, I don't think are gonna go too far, but I do love the parallels. I love the parallels of the car cards. I think like the cars are going to change over the years. They're going to look different. I think kind of having some of those, I think you'll see people to start collecting the cars throughout the years. I think is something that we're really going to see.
Especially, as they change, like we have like all the new livery, like they're all coming out right now. Like the cars are going to continue to evolve. They're going to look different every single year. Like, yeah, no, you're right. All right. So Lando car card, we have Grand Prix winner in Canada, but let's just,
I was at that race.
Oh yeah, that's okay. So we got a purple, we got an F2 purple.
Come on. Stars. Hey, Mazepin! Hey, he's F1 now, baby.
Like, it's funny. My daughter, like you with your dad, my daughter will watch the races with me. Like we'll get up at 5 a.m. and watch them together. Yeah. And she's like, gosh, Haas is so bad, right? But like, look, it's so hard to assess just how bad or how much was on the drivers. Now, I'm not one to say Nikita is going to be blowing up the grid at all, next year, but it's difficult, with looking at Haas and Mick and Nikita and say, look, how much of that was the car? How much of it was on you? But, some people like what Mick was able to do last year. And, he raced with his elbows out when he could and, was pretty, in quotes, racy out there.
Yeah. I mean, I remember the Hungarian Grand Prix when, bowling for Bottas kind of took out half the field and took out Max Verstappen's entire right side of his barge board. And then Max, with about the downforce of a Haas, they were saying was battling with Mick, and they had a nice battle there. I think they'll be able to mix it up. And, listen, here's what I will say about Mazepin. I think he's automatically going to get a bad rap, just like kind of Stroll did, in the sense of you've got a really rich father who's kind of putting you in a
Yeah.
seat. But what some people don't know is that Mazepin actually has the fastest recorded lap time ever in Barcelona, which is like the primo testing grounds, right? Before we
Yeah.
started testing in Bahrain the last couple of years, it was always Barcelona. So he got a test drive in a Mercedes, and he has the fastest time ever recorded. It's
That's a
under
that's a
116 seconds.
crazy
So,
stat.
so if
Like,
you put someone in a good car, I mean, the Haas was like driving my Mazda 3 outside. Like, you can't really control that thing as well. So, hats off to Mick for doing a decent job. But I think, as it begins to evolve, hopefully Haas, brings it up closer to the midfield next year. I'm really looking for Nikita to take a step forward. And I think
yeah.
Mick, has a higher ceiling because he's also got a lot more people pulling for him, right? I mean, Ferrari, their dream is to have him in their car and
Yeah.
winning races. So they'll do anything they can to get him there. But I think Mazepin will surprise some folks this year.
Yeah, I agree. I um kind of embarrassed to say this, but I have a sizable collection of Mazepin cards of like autos and stuff, but they're so cheap,
They're
these
available,
days, right?
right? I mean,
Um,
I remember did you end up getting the pink, the
I did
sapphire
not
101?
know, but the pink
That
was
went
like
cheap.
a heck of a deal
$500. That
for
was
the pink.
crazy.
Yeah,
That was like I've only pulled one pink ever. I pulled the Toto Wolf, and I sold it for God 4 or 5 times that amount. So
yeah.
a manager's pulling in that much more than a driver. I don't know. I think there's some
Well,
upside
by
there.
the way, like a better investment than my Dynasty boxes. I go nowhere. Well, hey man, I've really appreciated your time. I'm sure people are going to learn a lot from you and on this video. So Scott, thank you, aka Pyryte from Pyryte's Guard Castle. People can find you easily on Instagram. I'll plug it too in the feed. And what I would say is it's an entertaining watch for any breaks if you're not participating, but if you are participating, it's an emotional roller coaster that sometimes just kind of goes your way, and you could be
Yep.
like Scott running around with an orange auto Max Verstappen with both arms pumped up as if you just won a Grand Prix. So
Yeah,
thanks a
no,
ton, man.
yeah, really appreciate you having me on. I love what you're doing here. Everyone, make sure you're checking out racingcards.com, the forum, everything. Really looking forward to all the other videos and content you're going to produce, man. Really appreciate you having me on here today.
Awesome.